20 years of Porsche Cup Brazil racing have been fantastic over the years, and it's great to see that the sport is just growing bigger and bigger every single year. We have taken our fantastic exploits in the world of motorsport overseas for this first of our 3 endurance weekends in the 2025 campaign, as the Porsche Carrera Cup and Porsche Sprint Challenge Brazil drivers have headed to their neighbouring native tongue land, Portugal, in the Algarve. It's going to be a fantastic battle as we return to the Autódromo Internacional Algarve circuit, the Portimão racetrack, where Lewis Hamilton secured his 100th Formula One race victory many years ago. And it is, of course, also one of the only 2 locations where Portugal has visited the world of Formula One. We haven't visited here for 10 years, and it's great to be back on this fantastic circuit. The ambient temperature, 28 degrees Celsius, the track temperature, 48 degrees. But as you can see, the humidity is about 62% with a wind speed of 11 kilometers an hour. There are some potential rain clouds lingering over the skies here in Portimão. The wind is fairly strong, but the excitement and the fever to go to battle for the first part of qualifying is very exciting indeed. We're about to go into the first of 4 qualifying sessions, 20 minutes each in duration, where each of the 2 drivers in each car heading into tomorrow's endurance race will get the chance to go out onto the circuit. The first of those are heading out now in the Carrera Cup battle. That means that we're going to see the 3 classes, Carrera Cup, Carrera Sport and Carrera Rookie, all take to the circuit for 20 minutes of qualifying. This doesn't normally happen in the world of Porsche Carrera Cup. Normally, the individual classes would go out on the qualifying circuit on their own for 10-minute sessions. But in the endurance world, all 25 cars across the Carrera Cup will head out on the circuit together, and their first drivers will head out onto the circuit first. Their second drivers will take the second session, and that will combined times set the grid for tomorrow's qualifying race. For tomorrow's proper race, I should say, the endurance event, the first of 3 in the 2025 campaign. Good afternoon, everybody. Jake Sanson here with you as we gear ourselves up for another exciting weekend of great motorsport action. We had a proper ding-dong in the challenges of races last week on this fantastic circuit in the sprint phase of the Porsche Carrera Cup. Now, this is the first of 3 weekends this year where we will have an endurance challenge event. Going to be a very exciting battle for all of the contenders, as this time it will be a very different type of race. This one is not really based on fast speed in terms of its short track of racing, 25 minutes, as it normally would be. But this is the first of 3 endurance races this year. The first obviously being here for the 5th weekend of the championship after 4 sprint race weekends, 2 at Velocita, 1 at Interlagos and 1 last week here at Portimão. But we're continuing our Portuguese holiday as we gear ourselves up ready for the next encounter, which will take place on the last week of August. And that's going to be a really exciting battle, as the drivers will have basically 5 days of exciting race and testing action for the Estoril Sprint and Endurance Week. And then that will be leading on to the final sprint round of the championship. That will be in November, at the beginning of the month at Interlagos. The drivers will stick around, or of course, in various business guises, they will go back to work for a couple of weeks and then return to the Interlagos circuit, where the final endurance of the season will take place on the 22nd of November. And that is going to be a really exciting battle for all of the drivers. Of course, the last sprint weekend will also be sharing the weekend's bill with the Formula One Grand Prix of Sao Paulo. So there's some real incentives for the drivers to put on a good show, and they're certainly going to do that over the course of the season. Slightly different driver lineups in the endurance category, of course, as well as in the sprint challenge. There are certain drivers who can only spare the time to go racing in the competition in endurance. And obviously, all of the drivers that do regularly compete in the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil and Sprint Challenge Brazil, well, this weekend, they get a co-driver. In many cases, it is their driver coach. In other cases, it's just a mate who's been able to rope themselves into the battle. So Miguel Paludo, the man who currently leads the Porsche Carrera Cup Sprint Challenge this season, is teaming up with Alan Helmeister. Antonella Bassani is not teaming up with her regular cohort, who has been doing fantastic work in the X Games in previous years gone by. Last year, of course, it was all about the fantastic performances from Antonella Bassani. She actually teamed up for the last round of last year's championship with Cecilia Rebelo. She can't do that in 2025 because she has her own battle to take on. So that is obviously a very different challenge now for her in 2025. So that's going to make things a little bit more entertaining as we gear up for the next part of the competition. Last year, she teamed up with Letizia Buffoni, who is the Red Bull-backed X Games athlete in the world of skateboarding, as well as a racing driver. This time, Antonella Bassani is teaming up with Nicolas Costa, who will be the second driver in that particular team. Lucas Salas is back in action in the number 70 car, and that was him just charging up the inside to give himself track position while on his first flying lap. He's actually teaming up with Rafael Suzuki, the Stock Car Pro driver. So expect those two to be very strong from the outset in the Carrera Cup battle. One of the favourite combinations coming into this season. Obviously, Paludo and Hellmeister have also got to be firm favourites coming in. But we have to keep an eye as well on the number 88 car, as we have Pedro Bozel and Lidin Zindelli teaming up to go for that one. That's a really strong lineup in 2025 for those two cars, for those two drivers, I should say. Then Matias Camperato, the reigning Brazil F4 champion, is teaming up with Arthur Leist, who is a very talented driver in the world of Stock Car Pro. And the sixth and final driver combination in Carrera Cup is Marcel Muller, the man who's had more punctures than he's had good days at the office in 2025. But he's hoping that his recent form at the Autódromo Algarve last week is going to be a continuation for the rest of the season. And he's going to be partnered by Felipe Fraga, another strong driver from the Stock Car Pro Series world. So that is one heck of a combination in Carrera Cup. Drivers are starting to put their fast laps down. For the record, it is Linu Perez, one of the drivers in the sport category, who is teaming up with Beto Gressa. Those two are going to be very, very quick indeed, but Lucas Salas is going to come across the line to complete his lap, and he has just done a 147.221 then for Lucas Salas, just quicker than Marcel Muller and Felipe Fraga. I was going through the competitors in the sport category, so we'll go back to that. Linu Perez, as I mentioned, is teaming up with Beto Gressa. Sebo Malucelli is back. He's teaming up with Marcos Gomez for this season. Nelson Montero is going to partner Thiago Camilo. Rumen Zimkovic has absolutely got the A-list celebrity lined up for 2025 because he's teaming up with the first ever FIA Formula E champion, Nelson Piquet Jr. Francisco Horta is teaming up with William Frere. And then we have Yosemar Junior once again partnering Sergio Ramallo. Gaio Castro is teaming up with Danilo Dadani, another very talented racer. Marcos Regadas is partnering Rodrigo Melo. And then to finish off the sport run is Carlos Campos and regular Carrera Cup driver in the sprint category, Thiago Vivacqua. So that'll be a fantastic battle, especially considering that Thiago Vivacqua has been a race-winning driver in 2025 already. Of the rookie class, Flavio Champiao is going to be teaming up with Bernardo Pinheiro. Marco Pisani will be sharing his car with Renan Guerra. Leonardo Sanchez with Rafael Martins. Paulo Souza with Galid Osman. Good to see him back in the act again. Eric Santos will team up with Gabriel Röber. Piero Cifali is teaming up with Andre Bragantini Jr. Marco Billy teaming up with Maurizio Billy. And then Eduardo Menossi will share his car with Leonardo Reis. Wagner Pontes is sharing his car with Rafael Reis. And finally, Silvio Morostoni, who is a race winner in his category, in the sprint category this year, is teaming up with Jeff Giassi. Now that is another very strong lineup. He was very competitive in 2024. There is Matias Camperato in the 118 car. He'll hand that car over in the second qualifying session to Arthur Leist. And then, of course, the two times will combine to give us the grid for the later race in the weekend. So currently it is Lucas Salas who has gone quickest with a 147.221. That's almost a second quicker than Marcel Muller. Yosemar Junior and then Matias Camperato from Carlos Campos, the number 14 car, doing a fair job at the moment to put himself into the top 5. And then Rumen Zimkovic, who has set a lap and then come back into the pits. They've got 20 minutes in this session rather than the usual 10 minutes per driver. And that is, of course, because we've only got 4 qualifying sessions, 2 per driver, across each category. After the 2 sessions that we've had for the Carrera Cup drivers, then we'll hand over to the Sprint Challenge competitors, which is going to be a much less busy formation of cars because there are only 9 competitors in the Sprint Challenge category. So I think this year's grid is going to be far less congested than the 2024 running. There were times when there were just a little bit too much in terms of competition out on the circuit at times, particularly harkening back to when we were racing last year in Argentina. Leonardo Herrmann is going to be teaming up with Vito Bautista, Sadek Leiter with Fabio Carbone, Luis Souza with Bruno Bonifacio, Jose Morenito with Matias Uyoro, and then Cecilia Rebello will partner Pietro Rembano, Daniel Newman with Gustavo Bandera, Carlos Ruiz with Carlos Ruiz Jr., so that'll be great to see the two of them teaming up. Rafa Brocchi will partner Vitor Gens, and then finally Claudio Reina will team up with Joao Gonçalves. Looking for a top time to topple Lucas Salas. Matias Camperatos has done a 1:48.007 as he comes across the line, so that's 7/10 of a second away from Lucas Salas. The Porsche's absolutely rapid. I should point out that even though the 22 Caio Castoro's car is identical in appearance to Matias Camperato, I should point out that in the world of Porsche Carrera Cup in Brazil and Porsche Sprint Challenge in Brazil, there are no official race teams. It's all basically in-house. They grab a group of mechanics to engineer the car, but there is no individual teams championship. There's no official team. You basically run the car all in the garage together in adjacent pit garages, and it's all in-house. So there's no individual teams like there is in some Carrera Cup championships around the world, and of course also in the Mobile One Porsche Super Cup. So when we say the team has done a great job, we literally mean the 5 or 6 mechanics that are engineering one car, and that is a very small team. So good to see everybody really working together to try and put their cars further up the grid. Lucas Salas currently in provisional pole position, Matias Camperato second, from Josimar Junior and Marcel Müller, then Silvio Modestoni, Carlos Campos, Roman Zimkovic, Marco Pisani, Eduardo Minossi and Seba Malucelli. So the gap between the top 10 at this moment is 2.7 seconds. We're still getting into the early phase of this qualifying session though. We're just over halfway through, and some drivers have genuinely gone out there to bang in their fast lap nice and early. Others are building up to the lap, trying to warm up the tyres and the brakes to get them to optimum temperature. Though while Lucas Salas' lap time is very impressive at a 1:47.221, I wouldn't expect him to dominate qualifying by 7/10 of a second. And what you have to take into account as well is that that doesn't set the grid order. What does is when you then take the session 2 driver's lap and then combine it with the lap set by session 1. So that's how you set the grid for the endurance race in the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil. It's the 2 times aggregated together, and then we find out what the real starting grid, the true starting grid as it were, is going to be. But it certainly gives us a bit of an indication as to what we're playing with in terms of procedure. There is the 27 Hebron car, that is Josimar Junior. A very different livery, I have to say, compared to what they ran last year, because in 2024, the Brazilian motor racing community was paying tribute for the majority of the year to the late great Ayrton Senna da Silva, because 2024 marked 30 years since his passing, and there were all sorts of tributes in many different guises last year. For Josimar Junior, his was the most striking because he painted his car in the colours of Ayrton Senna's legendary and iconic helmet design. So it was pretty cool seeing a Porsche being raced in Senna colours. Change of tyres for Lucas Salas as he gets ready to go back onto the circuit for another quick run. There is the 14. That is Carlos Campos. That's the car he's sharing with Thiago Vivacqua, the number 14 Galacticos car. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they can pick up the pace a little bit. Currently, Carlos Campos in P6, 1.8 seconds away. But in the endurance, as we keep stressing, it's about the aggregate times of the 2 cars combined that sets the grid. So nobody needs to panic too much going into this first session. Obviously, Lucas Salas is going to give Rafael Suzuki an extra 7/10 of a second to play with. But it's certainly not the be-all and end-all if the lap time doesn't quite come together. There is the 99 car. That is the car being driven by Vanio Pontes. Again, they're just going to check tyres and tyre pressures in particular. So far, only 1 lap completed by Pedro Bozel, who is, of course, sharing his car with the ex-Grand Prix weekend driver, Lidim Zindelli. He was in the FIA Formula 3 Championship in years gone by, I do believe. 7 minutes to go. And obviously drivers wanting to find a little bit more time. Lucas Salas has only just rejoined the circuit after his little sojourn to the pits. Quite a few teams taking that opportunity as well and then going straight back out again. So what is the number 14 Carlos Campos going to do? He's been relatively strong across the sectors. So let's see what he does as he comes across the line. A 1:50.11, so that's not quicker than his personal best. There is the number 7 car. That is the car that's being driven this year by Miguel Paludo in the sprint races. He is the current championship leader and looking so good to take yet another championship title. Miguel Paludo, of course, has had a very impressive run of late. The number 7 car has just been mighty, and don't forget that he's won over 39 races over the season. I think he's won 40 races now, possibly even 41 now in the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil. He's raced in the ARCA East, NASCAR Trucks, the GT1 Challenge Europe, and in NASCAR Xfinity. He is one of the most versatile drivers in the world, and I don't think Miguel Paludo gets half as much credit as he should do as a racing driver. He's going to be sharing his car this weekend with Alan Hillmeister after a very interesting campaign for both men in 2025. What's very important to note, of course, is that this year the reigning champions are not returning to the fray, because last season it was a very interesting combination that managed to come through for the victory in 2024. We had an absolutely fantastic season last year where it was all about consistency. But Vernon Neugebauer and Rubens Barrichello won the Endurance Challenge title last season. They actually won the endurance race at Estoril in June last year from pole position. But they're obviously not competing in 2025. Neither are his two sons, FIFA and Duda Barrichello, and that's a big accident. Damage to the car that is definitely going to bring out a red flag here, and that is Rumen Zimkovic. Well, that is dramatic, because that means that Nelson Piquet Jr. is unlikely to take the car for the second session. That's a very big amount of damage to the left rear quarter. So whatever Rumen Zimkovic has hit, it's going to put him and his teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. firmly out of qualifying. And that car is stationary right in the middle of the racetrack in a qualifying session. So that is almost certainly going to bring out the red flags with 4 minutes and 7 seconds there. There it is, the red flags are out. That was the only course of action, really. Now, with only 4 minutes remaining, do they restart the session and give the drivers one more flying lap? There's an argument to suggest that they should. And Antonello Bassani had only just popped up into second position at that point as well. 0.7 of a second slower than Lucas Salas. Don't forget that this is Antonello Bassani's first year in the Carrera Cup category, having stepped up from sprint last year. She's sharing her car in 2025 with Nicolas Costa in the endurance category. As we mentioned earlier on in the bill, shared it last year with Leticia Buffoni, and when they had a 3-driver team in the very long race that took place at Interlagos last year, it was the two of them and Cecilia Rebelo, who of course really seriously got the bug for racing in the Porsches and now races herself in the Sprint Challenge. So let's see what happened here. Oh, this looks like it's going to be a separate incident, actually. This is the 25 going around. So that is Paulo Sousa having a spin. So that's Paulo Sousa having a moment there off on the curbs. Now the graphic coming up on the screen is safety car, but of course it's race trim. So that must be a test that they're doing there, ready for tomorrow. The 83 comes into the pits. That is Maurizio Billi. So Maurizio Billi is the first driver to take the car. First listed driver is the first one to go out in the session, and then obviously for session number 2 they will send the second driver out. There is the number 27. That is the car belonging to Yosimar Junior, sharing that car with Sergio Romayo. But we're under red flag conditions here in the first qualifying session for the Porsche Cup endurance event here at the Autódromo Internacional Algarve 2025. After what looks like a big impact. Now, are we going to see what happened here? We're going to see some slow motion replays by the look of it, not necessarily of any accidents. We're going to see just how much tyre degradation there is at the first couple of corners as the number 12, Marco Pisani, goes very deep into the first corner. Trying desperately to get the rookie pole here. It looks as though the Carrera pole is going to go to Lucas Salas. The Sport pole is going to go to Yosimar Junior, and the rookie pole to Silvio Morastoni. But that is obviously only after one session. So we've got to look at both sessions for a real understanding as to who is on the pace. So that is Edoardo Menossi going through the shot there in the 85 car. And that is Maurizio Billi, who is sharing the car with Marco Billi. So good to see they're keeping it in the family in this endurance season, which only has 3 events, of course. This one at Portimão, then in August, off the back of a sprint challenge, couple of days of racing. We also have a very exciting challenge for the endurance racing in Estoril, same as we did last year. And then, of course, the end of season bout 2 weeks after the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend, also taking place in Porsche Cup Brazil at Interlagos. So Lino Perez trying to get himself up to speed. We're looking at Seba Malucelli and Vanya Pontes when they were out on the circuit together. But obviously there is a lot of damage to Roman Simkovic's car, and that is not going to be taking any further part in qualifying. And I would guess that Nelson Piquet Jr. is also not going to get a chance to run in that car during qualifying, because there's no way they can repair it in time. So rather sadly, I think that means that Roman Simkovic and Nelson Piquet Jr. are going to be starting tomorrow's race from the back of the grid. Some of these slow-mos really do give you a proper indication as to just how much load there is on these tyres. So great to see some of the footage slowed down here. Seba Malucelli, just look at the rims of these Porsches when they come off the turn. You can see just how much travel there is at slow motion in the rubber. You don't really get to see that until the footage is properly slowed down. A couple of scary moments. Silvio Modestoni on his way to a potential pole position in the very appropriately numbered 911. Always very special when a Porsche runs in number 911, because of course these are loosely based on the Porsche 911, the original design from the 1950s. That is Santos trying to get himself dialed in, the number 38 car, sharing that machine with Gabriel Herber. And of course, the red and white cars that are going to become very synonymous with running at the front end of the field. Caio Castro is in one of them, and the 118's Matias Camperato. There's Pedro Bozel, who was just getting himself up to speed when that red flag flew. He was only 20th. He'd only done his second flying lap of a 1:50.5. So now he's only going to get really one shot to go out there and set a quicker lap. That's why I kind of suggested maybe there's a chance for drivers to go quicker when we restart, but only with one flying lap, because it's going to take them around 1:49 at the limit to get around this circuit. On that first lap out of the pits, they're going to be warming up tyres and brakes, so that's going to take a long time. So I would guess that they're only going to get one flying lap out of this session. Don't forget, it'll take about 30 seconds to get everybody out onto the circuit from the pit lane. So some drivers will clearly have an advantage based on where they're lined up in the pits as to whether they'll get another flying lap in this session. And then, of course, the times from session 1 will have to combine it with the times from session 2. And that is where we will find out who is going to be starting where in tomorrow's racing. But certainly for the moment, the favourite for pole position is Lucas Salas in the number 70 car, as he will team up, no doubt, with Rafael Suzuki. But great performances from the two teenagers, Antonella Bassani and Matias Camperato, who find themselves in second and third. Marcel Muller, only 5th quickest, a 1:48.2, slower than Josimar Junior, and only just a shave quicker than Nelson Monteiro and Silvio Modestoni. So it really does show you how things shake up in this category from week to week. Marcel Muller, of course, was a race winner a week ago in the sprint category, but in the endurance, everything is very different. That's because you win in the sprint doesn't mean you're going to get a chance to win in the endurance race. And also, conversely, just because you end up having a tough time in sprint, that doesn't count you out of getting a decent podium finish in the endurance category. Green flags at the end of the pits. That tells us that Roman Simkovic's car has been recovered very quickly. And so everybody is now venturing out for what is going to be a single flying lap. That's all the drivers are going to get in this continuation of the run. The amount of pressure that's going to be on the shoulders of these drivers to go quicker is going to be immense. They've got to put it together for that one flying lap when they were already trying to dial the car in as it was with a decent amount of potential. But of course, the pressure accelerating increases the level of risk that you need to take to put yourself up at the sharp end. And with greater risk comes greater probability for an accident. And we just had one of those from Roman Zimkovic that gave us a red flag. So we're rather hopeful that we're not going to get too many more of those today. 3 minutes and 10 seconds on the clock though, and everybody on their pit out, hopefully going to be pushing themselves for another strong battle out on the course. Still waiting for Matias Camperato and Yosemar Junior to join in the fun, along with Santos, Maurizio Belli and Vanier Pontes. Everybody else is basically out on the circuit now, trying to gather up the information needed to go quicker. Some are just going to consolidate on what they've got, leave it in the pits, and then leave their second driver to go out, because the chances of going much quicker than they currently have were starting to dwindle even before the red flag for Roman Zimkovic. But I'm very sure it's confident now to confirm that Nelson Piquet Jr. will not get his chance to run in the second session, as far as I'm aware. Which means it's a very quiet afternoon in the end for Nelson Piquet Jr. He's got plenty of experience in multiple categories: Rallycross, NASCAR, and 2 little championships called Formula E, of which he was the champion, and Formula One, in which he claimed a podium at the 2008 German Grand Prix at Hockenheim. The number 12, Marco Pisani, the leopard print car that he will be sharing with Guerra for the weekend. Definitely going to be enjoying himself out on the course. This is a circuit that the drivers like to refer to as the roller coaster. They certainly get a lot of joy from driving it. So Renan Guerra is going to be watching his telemetry data after the session, looking for all the opportunities to try and gain some time and put himself into a more confident position. I would think that maybe 4 or 5 people are going to get a second qualifying lap in. Not many people will, just based on how long it takes cars to get in and out of the pits here and to do a lap of the circuit on the pit exit, when you are obviously A, adhering to the pit lane speed limit, and B, you're obviously trying to find some temperature in the brakes and tyres on the outlap as well. So Marco Pisani behind the wheel, sharing the car, as we mentioned, with Renan Guerra. And there's a minute to go in the session, so all the drivers are racing back to the line to try and finish the flying lap they're on. Interestingly, Matias Camperato, Yosemar Junior and Maurizio Belli did not return to the circuit after their session. So clearly Camperato and Junior have a trick up their sleeve. They know they're 0.8 of a second and 0.9 of a second, respectively, off the pole position in this group. But when they hand over to Artur Leist and Sergio Romayo, they don't want a car that's been overheated. They don't want a car that's been overexerted. So there's a genuine chance here to hand the cars over to Sergio Romayo and Artur Leist, respectfully. And when they complete the session, they could well be looking at a pole position. It's all very well to go quick in one session. You have to go quick in both sessions. So that requires a lot of communication with your teammate, trying to assist them to go as fast as possible, even if you get upstaged by that split second. But that is not the point. 3, 2, 1, and time is ticked down to 0. So the cars will work their way across the line. Beludo is in second place with a 1:47.635. Rodrigo Melo comes up to third. Francisco Horta goes fourth quickest. Fastest of all in the second split is Marcel Muller. He's going to try and work his way through to the top position if possible. Lucas Salas crosses the line, does not improve his time, but I've got a feeling that we could see some big changes. Marcel Muller goes to the top spot with a 1:46.846 of a lap time. What a moment that is from Marcel Muller. Great lap time, excellent work, left it till the very bitter end. And the Fabian Patras car that has finally taken its first victory in the Sprint Challenge in 2025 now gets the job done across the run. And it looks to me as though Antonella Bassani has not improved on her time. The Sector 1 time was a 33.827, a 34.5 in Sector 2, so Bassani is not going to improve. Camperato and Junior did not go out. So there is Antonella Bassani in the Porto number 33 car. Very different to her normal Mobil 1 colour scheme that she races in the category. She was in black and gold last year. She's in more traditional Mobil 1 colours in the Sprint Challenge, although this weekend, of course, and for the subsequent weekends at Estoril and Interlagos, this is a very different livery for Antonella Bassani. We're used to having Mobil 1 plastered all over her car, and that's just not the case in this endurance run. So Marcel Muller gets the top spot from Lucas Salas, Miguel Paludo in third position in front of Rodrigo Melo, Francisco Horta and Antonella Bassani. Then Matias Camparato in front of Yosemar Junior, as they chose not to go out for the last 4 minutes of the session. And that puts them down from what was third and fourth to seventh and eighth. Linu Perez in ninth position in front of Nelson Monteiro. By the way, Marcel Muller was the quickest overall and the quickest Carrera Cup driver. Rodrigo Melo was the quickest driver in sport. The quickest driver in rookie was the man 11th position in the time, Silvio Modestoni, just quicker than Pedro Bozel. And then we have Carlos Campos in front of Seba Malucelli, Caio Castro in front of Eduardo Minossi, and then Rumen Zimkiewicz in front of Marco Pisani, Paulo Souza, Vanya Pontes, and then in the number 15 car, it is Leonardo Sanchez, my apologies. Then it is Eric Santos in front of Maurizio Billi, Flavio Chiampao, and at the tail end of the field in the number 74 car, it is Piero Cifali. Now, we have just finished the first qualifying session. Those are all of the drivers in the first named pairing. So driver one was the person who put the car in pole position in the first run. Now they will hand over to driver two and combine the lap times, and that's how we set the grid for the race tomorrow. But Marcel Muller has certainly set the ball rolling there with a 1:46.846, and that gives his teammate Felipe Fraga 0.375 of an advantage over the number 70 car driven by Lucas Salas in that first session to play with. Everybody else is at least 0.789 behind. Rodrigo Melo is 8/10 off. Francisco Horta is a full second off. So it definitely puts Felipe Fraga, the Stock Car Pro driver and former youngest ever Stock Car champion in the Brazilian Championship, a great platform with which to head into this particular battle. We're going to see a replay of Marcel Muller into turn one. Is he about to find a very scary back marker in a very scary position as he works his way through? We're certainly watching Marcel Muller chasing down the 74. That is the car belonging to Piero Cifali. Now we're just seeing some general replays of Marcel Muller extracting the very last possible ounce of speed from all four corners of his number 544 Fabian Petrus car. As we pointed out, no teams in this championship, just a few mechanics and good handiwork. So Marcel Muller, having gone quickest in the session, now gets to hand the car over to Felipe Fraga. Lucas Salas going second, he gets to hand his car over to Rafael Suzuki. And then Miguel Paludo, the championship leader in Sprint Challenge, he gets to hand his car over to Alan Hellmeister, and so on and so on. But a very satisfied and very calm delivery there from Marcel Muller to go top spot. 0.375 of a second quicker than Lucas Salas, and 0.789 of a second quicker than Miguel Paludo. Over 0.8 of a second quicker than everybody else. There was a full 7 seconds for the lap separating Marcel Muller on the top to Piero Cifali in 25th. And that's one of the other things I love about a Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil weekend. It's a real celebration of the brand as well. It's not just racing, it's a real celebration of the brand. Nobody's ever been brave enough while I've been at Portimão to dive into that pool. It's not particularly deep, it's there for show, it's not for swimming at all. I should just point that out. You do get a few podium ceremonies taking place in that pool over time, and I do wonder if, as that's the first time we've actually come to Portimão for 10 years, I've got a feeling that there's a possibility that tomorrow's victory celebrations could include that pool for reasons that will become blindingly obvious. So now there is a slight gap in between the two qualifying sessions, and that is obviously to give the teams time to change the tyres for a fresh set, adjust the settings, give the number one driver for session Q1A a chance to hand over to the competitors for Q1B. And that is the sister driver in the car. So for Marcel Muller, exchange for Felipe Fraga, for Lucas Salas, exchange for Rafael Suzuki, for Miguel Paludo, exchange for Alan Hellmeister, and so on and so on. Over the car driver combinations, it is very tough to know who's actually going to take the victory here. I would say the front row of the grid is almost certainly going to look like number 7 and number 544. Certainly Marcel Muller and Miguel Paludo with their teammates Felipe Fraga and Alan Hellmeister are going to be fairly difficult to beat, although Lucas Salas does have Rafael Suzuki as his not-so-secret weapon. So the drivers will venture out onto the circuit once again, pushing to try and find the fast lap time, and a 1:46.846 is what Marcel Muller managed to achieve in Q1. So now we venture out onto the circuit ready for session 2. And that means that all of the drivers in the Q2 lineup, the second driver, will now take over the car. Well, there is the number 80. So that is the car now given to Nelson Piquet Jr. So that is the plain silver. This is what happens in Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil. If there is an accident to one car, then essentially they will acquire a spare car. There is a fleet of about 6 or 7 Porsche Carrera Cup cars here as spare machines. And whoever basically has an accident, they are given the chance to take one of the spares. The number 80 is, in this case, put onto Nelson Piquet Jr.'s car. There's no time to obviously wrap the car in that team's sponsors. You've just got to take the spare car in the condition that you've been given it. And that will be the car that you race. Obviously, of course, the advantage there is that essentially these are all cars built to run equal. But in reality, in the world of motorsport, in the words of Jim Douglas's characters in The Love Bug, they make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and 1 or 2 of them turn out to be something special, and nobody knows why. It's very much the same with the Porsche Carrera Cup. You can build 100 of these cars, and there are over 250 of these cars racing in the world today. You can build them exactly the same. They are built in the same factory, to the same specification, with the same materials, and it's almost impossible to get 2 of the cars to behave exactly the same way. That's engineering. So this is the conversation going on in the number 7 crew. Conversation between Miguel Paludo and his engineer, hoping to send messages via the radio to Alan Hellmeister, who's taken over the car. But the former Formula E champion and ex-Grand Prix driver Nelson Piquet Jr. is lining up at the end of the pit lane in the now blank number 80 car. It should be in Zimkovich's brilliant sponsorship colours. What will happen to them overnight, of course, is that car will recover back into the pits and they will try and repair it, ready for the race tomorrow. If they cannot repair it, then the team have dispensation to run with the spare Carrera Cup car that they have been provided. And you're allowed to do that at various points through the race as well. In Porsche Carrera Cup, let's say you have 3 or 4 stints. If one driver is able to run one car and then they have a mechanical problem at the pit lane, you're allowed to switch the car over at the pit stop and send them out in one of the spare cars running under the same number. We saw that a few times last year, particularly with Antonella Bassani sharing her car with Letizia Buffoni. There was an accident in one of the practice sessions, I seem to recall, and they were able to utilize a different car. And then halfway through the race, they were able to repair it. And so they sent the original race car out onto the circuit. Then the trouble struck again, and so they changed over for the spare car yet again. I think there's even options to go into a spare car if the second driver doesn't really want the risk of destroying their teammate's normal race car. We've seen that in the past as well, when people will take a spare car rather than do the race in their teammate's car that they race with in the sprint challenge on a full-time basis. They don't want to put that much pressure on themselves. So we've got another 20 minutes on the clock as the drivers will venture out onto the circuit here at the Autódromo Internacional Algarve. There is Nelson Piquet Jr. leaving the pit lane as he leads the competitors out. Now, obviously, we have the drivers that we had, we have the cars that we had before, but now the drivers that we had before have swapped over. So Nelson Piquet Jr. is now in the number 80 car, which is actually a very different car to the one he would have been driving in before had Roman Zimkovic not had his seriously big shunt, which left the car stranded in the middle of the road. We still don't have a replay of that, by the way, because in this particular category, you have a lot of drivers trying to go for moves. Right, this is an interesting one. We've got Alan Hellmeister out on the circuit together with Felipe Fraga as they chase after Nelson Piquet Jr. Now, remember, the lap time that they've got to beat here originally is a 5:44 car of Marcel Muller, who did a 1:46.846. So now we'll have to see what the times are when they combine with their second drivers, as Alan Hellmeister runs together with Felipe Fraga in the 7 and 5:44. Great to see these endurance specialists back behind the wheel of these cars once again. It's not just about our competitors regularly in Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil and Porsche Sprint Challenge Brazil. We like to think that there's the opportunity to bring in not necessarily a ringer, but certainly a celebrity driver or two that can really spice up the weekend. Last year we had all sorts of drivers popping in. We had Antonio Felix da Costa, we had Nelson Piquet Jr., we even had Rubens Barrichello, who went on to team up with Werner Neugebauer and become champions in the Porsche Carrera Cup endurance fight over the 3 weekends in 2025. It is still very doable, as there is the 544. That is Felipe Fraga trying to get himself up to speed. So the competitors now starting to dial the cars in, warming up the tyres, warming up the brakes, trying to feel what feels right. Because obviously you've got to have that faith and that confidence in the car when you're pushing it to the ragged edge to try and find that sweet spot. Never easy to achieve that. So Marcel Muller has handed his car over to Felipe Fraga. And so they're going to try and find the pole position time that they've been craving all weekend long. Certainly the job done so far in favour of Marcel Muller, but now they've handed the car over to a driver who doesn't race in every round of the championship, but certainly has great racing credentials regardless. Sorry, I wanted to go quiet there because there's nothing quite like listening to a flat six. And when you get an onboard picture, I just want to go quiet. I want to drink in the noise. So Felipe Fraga has done a 33.6 for the first sector, a 34.0 for the second sector. That's quicker than anybody's managing at the moment. And he is throwing down the gauntlet to try and give himself the best possible run for time qualifying. Obviously, all the drivers have gone out in Q1, and now we are in Q1B. Still all the drivers combining with each other to get the lap time that they are craving for. Nelson Piquet Jr. goes up to the top spot on a 147.9, but Felipe Fraga is going to come across the line. What will he do as he comes through? Top spot, Felipe Fraga, 147.109. That's a full 0.8 of a second quicker than anybody else. Nicolas Costa goes up with his second briefly, because then comes Rafael Suzuki. That time has now been disallowed, I'm afraid, due to exceeding track limits, so he's got to do better on his next flying lap. So it's Fraga, Gomez, Arthur Laced, Thiago Camilo, and then we've got number 33. Running in the mix there as ever, that is the car belonging to Antonella Bassani. But on this occasion, that car is being driven very beautifully, I have to say, at the moment, and very serenely, the number 72 car by Nicolas Costa, who knows he's got to put on a brave show. He knows he wants to impress the team and impress the other drivers out there. Got this fabulous situation where we got, in the timing sheets, we've got Carrera Cup, rookie, and then we've also got the sport drivers, although rookie and notably not known as rookies, they're known as challenge drivers. So some minor adjustments required to the machinery then, as Jeff Giassi and Marco Regadas decide they have had enough of keeping their cars out on the road for this part of the proceedings. So as he comes off the final turn, Nelson Piquet Jr. wanting to go faster than anybody. A 147.1 to beat as he comes through, and he's done it. 147.077 for former Grand Prix driver and the first ever Formula E champion, Nelson Piquet Jr. He's in a Porsche and he's still driving like he stole it. So Felipe Fraga's time good enough for second place at the moment with a 147.1. We need to see what kind of times we're going to get from the likes of Rafael Suzuki. So Rafael Suzuki drops all the way back down into 14th place. Now, how we set the grid, of course, is to take the 2 times from the session and come up with the medium time. So let's say, for example, up to the top spot now comes Marcos Gomez in this session. He's just done a 147.002. But if you combine that time with the time set by his teammate Seba Malucelli, who did a 149.037, that's going to put them on a median time of 148.019. That's only going to be good enough for 7th position. Anyway, I'm going to get into mathematics quite a lot here, but essentially the times of the two drivers combine, and then we come up with the medium of those times, and that's how we're going to assess where the starting grid is going to be. Certainly amongst the 25 cars we have on the circuit at the moment. Up to the top spot in this session comes the 85. That is a very quick lap time indeed there from Leonardo Reis. He's done a 1:46.4, quicker than Tiago Vivacqua now, who goes second. Oh, and off the road, that is the 99. That's going to bring either a safety car or a yellow flags or a red flag, and that is the car belonging to Reis, I do believe. Well, that is the Pontes and Reis car. So Vanya Pontes and Rafael Reis. Red flags with 12 minutes and 54 seconds left on the clock. And that's going to be game over then for the 99. They had only just set a time there for Vanya Pontes, I think it is. I think it must have been, then have been Leonardo Reis that did the first session. Didn't spot that, but it must have been. Otherwise, Vanya Pontes would be the one in the car then, and Reis would be in the car now. So we've got one car up at the top spot, the number 85, I think it is, getting a fantastic run. That's Leonardo Reis, and then we have Rafael Reis having his teammate Vanya Pontes drop the car and go off the road. So just as teams were starting to get into their stride, we lose some time. Now, significantly, there are two teams that didn't set their second lap time yet. One of them is the number 70, that's Rafael Suzuki. So in terms of average time, they're still sitting in second place on a 1:47.221, but that's largely, of course, because their second driver, Rafael Suzuki, has not set a lap time yet. The other significant driver who hasn't set a lap time yet is in the number 17, that's Marcos Regadas, who shares that car with Rodrigo Melo, who on this occasion decided to go into Q1. But they're both relatively good times on their own right, a 1:47.2 and a 1:47.6. But we're looking for the average time, looking for the medium time. That means that the two drivers have basically got to be fast and fairly close together in lap time, because at the moment, Leonardo Reis has done a 1:46.473, and that has shot him and the team up into 8th position overall, because his teammate did a 1:49.432. So that puts the average for that team up onto a 1:47.952. So the quicker that the number 85 of Reis can go, the better the chances are of he and Eduardo Manossi cracking the top 5 for the starting grid. So now we're just waiting for the recovery of the number 99 car. There is the 87. That's Nelson Monteiro's car that he is, of course, sharing this weekend, and hopefully all the other weekends as well, with the very talented Thiago Camilo. So the contenders just waiting for their call-up to get back on the circuit once again. As the cars are wheeled in, this could be a relatively long job, because that car is well and truly wedged in the gravel trap. I wonder if there's footage of it. If not, then we can only imagine what happened. So very difficult indeed to see the contenders losing traction like that, losing ground, and then it compromising them for the rest of the event. Good advert for the social medias there at Porsche Cup Brazil. You know it makes sense, you know you want to do it. But the time is ticking down again here, and that's because we are going to go back under green flag conditions. So now that the timer is ticking down, now that the drivers are starting to go back out on the course, they've got to wait for the signal all clear before they actually go running again. The green flag is stationary at the end of the pits, and that is a message to all drivers. Get out there and do your best work. So far, there are 5 drivers who have not set a time in this particular group. Rafael Suzuki, Jeff Gyasi, Marcos Regadas, Maurizio Billi, and Lidom Sendelli, interestingly, with his team leader, the 88, Pedro Bozel, only managing to get to 16th position when you take into account the aggregate times, the medium times, as it were, of the other drivers. So there's still quite a lot at stake for the drivers here, ready to go out onto the circuit once again. The clock was ticking. It's now reset itself back to 12 minutes and 54 seconds. I'm not entirely sure who hit the wrong button there in race control and got the clock starting again, but fortunately it has now been rectified once more. So just waiting for the command to get going again. Of course, that means we're in for a very intriguing restart. Just a couple of moments now until the cars get back out onto the circuit again. 12 minutes 54 when they do rejoin.
Aproveitar aqui que a gente está parado, em suspenso, falar com o Wagner Pontes. O Rafa Reis, ele ficou na caixa de brita. Que sensação que você...
So it's at the end of the pit lane, and we go back into qualifying procedure once again. It's all hands to the 70 car. Rafael Suzuki still in pit road, but it looks as though it's a bit of frantic work going on there to send it back out again. Maybe they've made a last-minute decision to go onto a different set of tyres to what they were originally planning to. Certainly some frantic work down there in pit lane. Also, potentially good tactics to get out of the gaggle of the other cars, because once they're kind of on their own, that they give themselves some natural breathing space to go playing with at this point on the course. So there is the 87 car. Thiago Camilo will head back out onto the circuit in that particular machine. He managed to set a lap time good enough for 6th position in this session. And where would that put the number 87 car overall? 6th position again, a 1:48.4 combined with a 1:47.3 would give them a median time of 1:47.889. So currently the team that's looking to be in pole position is the 5:44 crew. As we expected, they are very quick indeed, and it's Marcel Muller combined with Felipe Fraga in this session that should seal the deal. There is the 118 car, now being driven by Arthur Leist, taking over from the young teenager Matthias Camparato. So a really interesting situation for the contenders as they continue to make good work of things. That Leonardo Reis behind the wheel of the number 85 has set a ridiculously quick lap time, a 1:46.473. There is the 70, that is Rafael Suzuki, race winner in Stock Car Pro. Very talented race driver, Rafael Suzuki, mixed lineage of Brazilian and Japanese. But certainly Rafael Suzuki, very talented driver. No matter what he gets himself into, he will always try and find the limit, and he'll be a very quick driver fresh out of the blocks. 6 teams, I should say, sorry, in Carrera. Then a handful more in the competition for the sport category, and then a handful more for the rookie category. Well, currently having not set one of the flying laps they were hoping to in the first run, there are 5 drivers yet who are down at the bottom, having not set a lap time. They are Marcos Regadas, Jeff Chiassi, Lidim Zendelli, Marco Billi, and then Rafael Suzuki, the man you're watching on your screen. Hopefully going to work his way up the order as quickly as humanly possible. There's the 11 car. That is the machine belonging to Bernardo Pinheiro, I think that is. Yes, it is, Bernardo Pinheiro. He's sharing that car, of course, with Flavio Chapau. But those 5 cars, of course, will not get to start the race until they have adequately put themselves into a competitive order. Meanwhile, Roman Zimkovic, despite having that big accident in Q1, having handed the spare car over to Nelson Piquet Jr., he's gone 2.4 seconds quicker, so their median time is good enough for 12th overall. That'll be a really competitive race for the two of them. Now, as we've seen so many times before here, the main purpose of the endurance race second driver, as it were, is not just to put in a decent level of stints, but it's usually also to show the young prodigy within the team how it's done. So currently we have Reis Vivacqua, Marco Gomez up into third position. I bet he's loving that. Nelson Piquet Jr. fourth position now in front of Felipe Fraga, Thiago Camilo, and Rafael Martins. Now, what does that do in terms of qualifying? Well, the median time, the average of the two drivers setting a time, is a 1:46.977. That lap, in and of itself, would be good enough to ask for pole position. There is the 14. The very talented Thiago Vivacqua, currently running second in the standings, hoping for a little bit more from these last 8 minutes of the run. But it's going to be very tricky indeed to see who's going to get the best of it. A 1:46.473 is the time they need to be. Purple in sector 2 for Sergio Aramayo before coming back into the pits. So they've clearly found something that might work, but they want to go in, quickly adjust it, and head the car back out again. There's not a massive amount you can change on these cars with them all being built to run equal, and even more so important, not that you're in a big team in this particular category, it's just a handful of you working on the car. And that again is to keep it nice and even between all of the contenders across the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil and also the Porsche Sprint Challenge of Brazil. There's the 14, Thiago Vivacqua trying to get that gap down. A 1:46.3 would do it. Got to work very hard to try and revenue some good performances out of this. Up and over the top of the crest, looking good. As that is a very tough run, and it looks as though we've got a change of leader now. The 38 Gabriel Horba has just gone fastest. So Gabriel Horba has just gone quickest. As we look at the number 25 on your screen, that is the car belonging to Galid Özman, who's sharing that with Paulo Sousa. But fascinatingly, we have got we've basically got an exciting run to the end of the qualifying session now, because Gabriel Horba, having done a 1:46.419, where does that put the 38 now? That shoots them up into 18th, because that's a 1:50.9 compared to a 1:46.4. Big difference in the lap times, as you can tell. So the median is going to be in the 1:48s. So for those who are struggling to figure out how this works, we have 2 qualifying sessions per car, 2 drivers, one in one session, the other in the other, and then we take their fastest laps, add them together, and then come up with what the median time would be, the average time of the 2 drivers across the session. And that's what you're aiming for here, to get the smallest possible margin. As Rafael Suzuki bangs in a 1:46.591, and that puts the team into pole position by a few hundredths of a second. Gabriel Horba trying to go quicker still on a 1:46.419. You might see a couple of drivers get into the 1:46.3s here just, but that's not important. What's important is the communication skills and the difference in your driving compared to your teammates. If you want to move further forward in qualifying, it's relatively important to try and get the most out of your car. So as he races back to the line, Rafael Suzuki is hoping that this is going to be a fantabidosi first weekend of the Thai half of the season. So Rafael Suzuki chasing down Marco Gomez, as Felipe Fraga has now put a lap time in of a 1:45.72. That puts the debate about pole position to bed for the moment. He's almost 6/10 of a second clear of the man behind him, and that of course is the very talented number 70 car of Rafael Suzuki, but he's still 7/10 of a second back in the overall. So Rafael Suzuki now motivated to try and put his name on the very top of that leaderboard once again. So Felipe Fraga now leads the way at the moment on a 1:45.725. That is the fastest lap she set this race in particular. So there's still a lot more to come. In the last 4 minutes, we could see a few changes here. William Frere has decided to pit in from what was 10th position. He'll be quite a long way down the order Up and over the top of the crest, the number 70 going well here, Rafael Suzuki. Does he go quicker? No, a 1:46.9. No better than his 1:46.5 from earlier on. Can we just point out that the fastest time has been set by Felipe Fraga, a 1:45.725. Now, anybody who basically whinges and moans about how the cold is affecting them, well, you check out what the heat is doing to these guys so far, boosting them up and spurring them on as here comes the number 544, Felipe Fraga. He's got the fastest one lap of a 1:45.725, but he'd dearly love to go a little bit quicker than that to really put the doubts beyond him. And it looks to me as though he's had no change of position whatsoever. He's had no change of lap time either. A 1:45.72 at the interval between patients. He's got himself a little bit of opportunity to look out the window of the commentary box. Fraga, Rice, Piquet Jr., Robert and Marco Gomez, the man on your screen, sharing his car, of course, with Seba Malucelli, as we know. Well, on aggregate times, it's very different. Fraga and Muller are still on top, but then in second place is actually Rafael Suzuki and Lucas Salas. They are the car currently in second in the standings. Third place is the 77. That's the first of the sport category drivers. William Frere alongside Francisco Horta. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to move further forward as the weekend progresses. Certainly in tomorrow's endurance race, there'll be more than one opportunity to stare beating your close rival on the circuit itself. With 2 minutes and 22 on the clock, it really is about just patience and discipline and trying to dial yourself in for a relatively straightforward lap. Never easy to know how that's going to work out for our competitors, but certainly they seem to have all the answers at the moment. So still the competitors racing to find another decent lap time on the board, as the 1:18 does not improve its time. That's Arthur Laced on a 1:47.033. Quicker lap time, but nothing that really puts any pressure or any danger on the competitors around. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see who's going to make the best of this in the closing stages of the session. Everybody wanting to find that little bit of extra line. What about Alan Helmeister? Well, he's just done a 1:46.355, and into the pits to park it comes the 5:44 of Felipe Fraga, and surely that is going to be pole position for the endurance category. Completely taken by the team. They're looking around and seeing what happens as the other cars around them are not likely to get close to them in terms of pace. So even Alan Helmeister, who's just done a 1:46.355, by the way, that's good enough for third position, but it's still 0.7 of a second on the median times slower than what the number 7 Alan Helmeister can do. And Helmeister has just been displaced again by Piquet Jr., I do believe, as Leonardo Reis is coming to the pits, second in the session, but they're not going to get higher in this one than about, I would say, top 10 is a reasonable target. 13th at the moment. But the drivers, I think, are finding this particular part of their weekend particularly frustrating. Gone are the days when you can just get out there on the track and pound it round, and however fast you went, that's wherever you started. Now there's so many more different things going on. So the number 7, Alan Helmeister, backs out of the lap and pulls across. That tells us he will not be going any further into this race now either. Conversations down in the pit bay between Felipe Fraga and the magnificent Marcel Muller. No worries at all. They're going to be pole position for tomorrow, and they know it. That's what it means to the crew. As they get confirmation, nobody now is going to top them. They are 0.7 of a second nearly clear of everybody else with the two median times. A 1:46.846 for Marcel Muller, a 1:45.7. Can you believe that, from Felipe Fraga? Median time is a 1:46.285, which on its own in this session would have been good enough for second quickest. Very impressive indeed from the two drivers behind the wheel. Marcel Muller in session 1, Felipe Fraga in session 2, and that really is spectacular stuff for our competitors. The number 74 going through the picture there. Not a great second session for them. Bragantini Jr. only bagging in a 147.963. Did some on the very last lap. I'm not sure how many brownie points you win for that, but certainly not a bad run at this precise moment in time. There is the 544, though, the Fabian Petrus car, picking up where he left off in 2025. So a lot of hard work needs to come then from the 455. So the highlights we're showing you there, just at the 544. First Marcel Muller and then Felipe Fraga really showcase what this sport is all about. That's the one thing you can say about the South Americans, particularly the Brazilians. You will never run out of talented racing drivers. As long as there is a sport, there will always be people to meet that challenge. And certainly on this particular page, it's been very tough, but also very joyous for the 544 crew. Fraga and Muller will start from the front of the grid for tomorrow's race. And I think they're a tiny bit happy about it. When you see how much work goes into these events, how much it is to run just a certain area of great fun. So there is the control tower over the top of the circuit. The Autódromo Internacional Algarve has already become a scene to Sir Lewis Hamilton picking up both his championship titles here. But this place really does conjure up so many memories for so many drivers. Even conjures up memories for me. The first time I was here was for the GT and Sports Car Classic events. It would have been absolutely hilarious to have getting themselves ready then for the run. There is the pole position secured in the Porsche Carrera Cup category. By the way, the sports category pole position is secured by the number 27. That is Sergio Romeo and Yosemar Jr. Fourth overall and the fastest time, median, across the two times. One set in session one and one set in session two. The rookie pole position in all of that went the way of the 911. That is Silvio Modestoni alongside Jeff Giassi. So now we go into the next session, slightly delayed for the two competitors in the pickup truck. I tell you what, it's going to be nowhere near as congested either, as there's only going to be a handful of you drivers in that particular driver briefing. Everyone else will make a very, very quiet exit. Stage left, I would say. But a really fantastic situation, a really tough challenge. But the 544 is the one that the remaining 9 cars will be trying to put better on us to make the progress. 2 20-minute sessions down, 2 20-minute sessions still to go. There are the pole sitters. Marcel Muller and Felipe Fraga, Yosemar Jr. and Sergio Romeo, and Silvio Modestoni and Jeff Giassi. Big headlines there, as 3 very different pairs of drivers will go to their own podium to pick up the trophy for the winning team. You do tend to say that a lot. You tend to see that a lot in GT single-seaters. The drivers are telling you just how much is at stake here. We've got the next run of competitors now. Luis Souza, Daniel Newman, Leonardo Herman. Then we have young Nito there, the 45 kart. Another 45 car, I should say, continuing to put on a good show here. And then it is the number 66 behind the 45 and 55. Cecilio Ribeiro has gone 7th quickest initially, in front of Kevin Brocchi. And then Claudio Reina running in 9th position. So we wait for the first of their 20-minute sessions. They too will also get 20 minutes out on the course in almost identical fashion to what we saw from the Porsche Carrera Cup class drivers. So they will end up going for pole position once again. There is the green flag flying at the end of the pit lane, and the 9 cars that come out to battle this time will get to do so. Nowhere near as tough stuff in terms of the performances in a previous run. So if we take a look at it just from the pure stock of the situation, it's been a very interesting race so far that we will get created and set up for tomorrow. But so far, all very clean as a whistle. There may well be a quick talking to with one or two drivers. I know that in particular, there are certain people out there who prefer to commentate on the races rather than races themselves. So the 9 cars, it'll be the 23, I should say. Leonardo Herrmann teaming up alongside Vitor Batista, then Sadek Leiter, who lost his life in 66. That's the number he carries. Fabio Corboni will team up with him. Luis Souza in the number 2 car is joined by Bruno Bonifacio. And then we can finish off with Simone Nito. So the drivers starting to dial themselves in and go for a decent run. Leonardo Herrmann leading the way then from Josimon and Nito out onto the circuit. Drivers trying to dial themselves in and get themselves ready for another exciting challenge to the pole position. These guys are not expected to challenge the guard up at the top spot. Marcel Muller getting a lap time there of 1:46.846. His teammate is still ringing in the ears there. Incredible to think that after all this fabulous time, you still get to hang out with your racing family on a weekend like this as well. It's even more exciting because a lot of the teams and drivers, when I say teams, I don't mean an official team as in the team's championship. I mean their licenses handed into race secretary, and you'll get them again at the end of the year. But this is exactly the kind of hard work that isn't necessary. Smart work will get you there all the time. So down to the first corner. It all looks pretty rosy for Conrad Garrow in the lead of this battle of chasing cars behind. So there is Leonardo Herrmann running fairly well in the first part of the session. 17.5 minutes still to find. Those beautiful pictures of the Autódromo Internacional Algarve capture the scene on those landscapes. It looks like something out of what LYL. It's really starting to produce some fantastic racing because it's X30 all over again. Drivers still putting in a good advocate for position. Carlos Ruiz Jr. has put the team into 4th position. So now we'll get to see in the last 16.5 minutes who has actually got a decent run of form now. But 16 minutes to go to showcase that you're good enough to challenge. The top 20 is realistically what these guys are probably going to be looking at. Rookie category, of course, where everything is just a little bit more laid back, a little bit less intense for this particular team. 16.5 minutes still to go on the clock then. So everybody is watching. Sato trying to blast his way around the far side and then gets on the curb, loses the back end of his car. Just watching that moment back again from my side. Very scary indeed. But there is the 23. That is the car belonging to Leandro Herrmann, who's had a very tricky time this season, it has to be said. Now, before we go any further in this race, you're probably wondering why I omitted to mention fantastic names like the Butterstone run. Up to the top spot comes Ruiz Jr. 1:50.655. That will have them knocking on the doors of the bailiffs in the end to steal away the lap time. Leonardo Herrmann, 4th position. In front of him is Cruz Jr., Josimon Nito, and Luis Souza. That means he's ahead of Rebelo, Vendetta, Sadek Leiter, and then Reina, and 246 there of Jens. Running in very close together. I think that might actually be a typo on my screen. But certainly for the 23, this is a chance to put yourself on the front row of the grid, sir. Leonardo Herrmann. Leonardo Herrmann with name and number printed on it. Running through on the incredible side of things. So now we're going to try and see who's got the initial raw pace. At the moment, it's Ruiz Jr. with a 150.6, and that alone is not going to make people's particularly history going. So now we're going to get to see some times tumble, hopefully. Ruiz Jr., 150.65. That's good enough for 24th on the grid. Second place. Now that is Chubble and Gens. 150.119 to beat. Here comes Francois. Fabio, sorry, Carboni. In his duel to get back into a So as drivers come across the line with just a few minutes remaining in the session, just under 14 minutes left in these slightly longer qualifying sessions for the cars, because normally they get groups of 3 groups of 10 minutes of sprint qualifying, and then the very last session is the fight for pole position in that category, and I think only the top 5 are allowed to go to it. There is the 55, driving a very smooth race indeed here, out in first position. So the 55, up to the top spot as we know now. Carlos Ruiz Jr. in front of Lehrman, Gens, later, Nito, Zen Garage. Unless, of course, the opportunity to share out your opportunity to move forward for these guys, then no doubt they will come flooding to make all sorts of fun scenes for you. 12 3/4 minutes left of the session, almost leaving you from these particular drivers. And don't forget, of course, at the end of this silent, there will be another one for just the rookies. They will have their play and they will have their say. The CRG Thailand drivers trying desperately to make good use of the scenarios up in front. So on to the close, hard facts. There is Sadak later. Back to the power. Ruiz Jr. going quickest in front of Volans. Later, I am Nito, and then Leonardo Herrmann, who was leading at one stage, now all the way back to, what's that going to be when the musical chairs have stopped rolling in his favour? I think that's only going to be 6th or 7th now. One thing I do love about these particular categories is, unlike motorsport, you have to be very focused, very concentrated, and almost like erasing the mind like a sieve. So those are the series of competitors we need to keep an eye on. That's Sadak Leiter battling away with Fabio Carboni. So those two trying to finish things off in a relatively good impact, with just a couple of minutes still before we can start thinking about the sessions on the circuit. Not exactly making a very easy going timetable to compress everybody in. Seems to be the order agenda here. We're halfway through this sprint challenge barbecue run, as heard very briefly by the CRU and the CIA. So Cruz Jr. and Cruz Senior are currently at the top spot in their category, and it's only good enough to put them onto the proper tail of these 4 or 5 drivers who are essentially sticking together like glue out there. So another decent flying lap coming in. Up to second place now, by the way, has come Bandera. So Bandera has pushed the number 21 Porsche to its absolute limits. Try and find that little bit of extra time from the mid-cola. there on the circuit. Then the 21 of Bandera trying to creep his car into the top spot here in this Porsche Carrera Cup Sri Lanka. Yes, invitational round. Let's see what happens here. The drivers come across the line. Looks as though we're not going to race against you then. So as the closing stages of this qualifying session in Group 1 will give the drivers food for thought heading into tomorrow, of course. With rain heavy but not dropped yet. I think it's going to find out in the next 5 laps or so. Haven't got that long, to be fair. So as the 98 pushes for another great run, it's the lady driver, Cecilia Rebelo, that is trying to find the ultimate pace. She's just been displaced out of 3rd position to drop back into 4th place at 1 minute 50.744, putting her right up to the sharp end. But hey, she's not just here to win races and win championships, although of course that would be nice at her own ambition. But it's the feeling I get with being my brothers and sisters who know they love racing as much as I do. Very nicely done there from the banners in the crowd. So Chris Jr. is your leader, then it is London, Gianfranca. We'll keep on putting these resources over here. So there is Leticia Buffoni's car normally. Seven minutes to go then. And the number 21 currently leads the way here, looking for a combined median time pole position in the car that, of course, we see Daniel Newman sharing with Gustavo Bandera. Gustavo Bandera, sorry, is trying to close up that little bit of time with currently a 1:49.7. That is unrealistic. That, of course, is where the two competitors have ended up taking most out of each other here. So with the last 6.5 minutes of this first of 2 sessions then in the Sprint Challenge category, only 9 cars taking part in Sprint Challenge in the endurance phase in 2025. But what's really good about the Sprint Challenge competitors this time is they haven't got so busy a circuit to play with this time, with the 25 cars competing in Carrera Cup in the endurance leg this year. It was always going to be interesting to see how many competitors would get their first proper taste of endurance racing, and they will do so with the club at El Bayou right here. Very much worth the trip if that's what your race driver wants to do. Across the line, we're going to get another very painful moment across the line from the 21 this time. That is the car belonging to Gabriel Gomez. The position for the very talented Leandro Herman. So now there's more great challenges to be had. There is Cecilia Rebelo, who's hoping that when she hands the car over to Nicolas Costa, it could be a very difficult age for his sister at this point to be having those kind of conversations is always very encouraging. The more you talk, the more likely changes to occur. As Bandera runs in the lead, Cruz Jr. second, and then his team is third. Or the very talented Leandro Herman and Vito Bachista. Just the conversations happening down in pit road as the number 7 car. Just under conversation there, that was the two particular propeller wings in 1980 at the closing stages of this one. It shows you just how intense the weather can change here. So there is the 98. Cecilia Rebello in that particular car. Back in days gone by, it probably would have been the marbles ladies, as they became known, only here to flog marbles. So through down to that Fast and Furious straight. Got a brake, turning for the corner. Back on the power for Cecilio Rebello. Onto the final turn. Is this going to be a particularly bombastic lap compared to what we saw from Bandera, a 1:57.97. So the competitors take their time to finish and deliberate their final run, hoping that it's just about going to be enough to get them to stay out on the slick tyres. So the last couple of minutes of the session continue to tick down here at the Autódromo Internacional Algarve, former Grand Prix venue, very sure concurrent MotoGP level. But this is the first time really that the sport of F4 has combined enough. The stars have really aligned to give the fantastic run all the way through. As we look at the number 246, that is the car. No major surprises there, belonging to Higgins, Rafael Burki. The final 2.5 minutes of Group 1 in the Challenge Cup. That magnificent time set by Bandera earlier on, the number 21, still stands. But thanks to the aggregates, nobody's going to be making much of a bold impact in change of position. We certainly did our best to. 2 minutes to go. Still plenty of time for some opportunities to bang in for pole position here. And up to the top spot comes the 246. So that just proves it. You can just hang on a little while longer into the session and try and find something pretty spectacular when you come back out of the kart again a little bit later. The final minute and a half, and it's Jens that has now gone into the top spot with a 1 minute 48.940. But of course, it also comes down to just how well balanced the car is, as they've been setting and retweaking it and doing what mechanics do to find that little bit of tiny extra pace. So now we're just going to try and see what these drivers have got in response. Ruiz Jr., currently running in third position, has decided to call it a day, and he'll hand over to his teammate very shortly indeed. Look at the energy as Gens pushes his way through to try and make up even more ground. The final 30 seconds then. Can anybody get close to the times of Gens? Bandera still having a very solid race in B2. Third place for Ruiz Jr. Derek Leiter is in fourth place. He's also the leading competitor in the sport category. Clearly wants to step up a gear and go and do these the final few seconds conclude then, so now everybody is just racing back to the line to do the most they can with the car they've been given. Bandera and Newman are now going to go in a direct shootout. Potentially, in a way, it's a bidding war, isn't it? So the race back to the checkered flag is going to be an important one for everybody. Has seemingly done a relatively good sector time. I note though that on that lap nobody has really found that additional bit of pace, and that will lead us in nicely to the Group 2 drivers. Only 9 of them, but they will know with some urgency what kind of drivers they are willing to be at the trunk end of the peel. And so the final qualifying laps come in then for Leonardo Herrmann. Only good enough for 6th place that, a 1 minute 50.179, but of course it's not one fast lap that gets you the pole position, or the fastest run, I should say, in the time qualifying sessions, of course. That honour is bestowed upon the drivers who get the second race lap times, and then you combine the first times and calculate the median. And that is how it all is supposed to play out. But for the number 23, fastest in the session for Webster Imukamel. And so after a very intense run, where the drivers will definitely be stretching the limits of these fantastic Mat6 engines, it is the 246 that has actually gone quicker than anybody else in this race, after what has already proved to be a very competitive run of drivers. But certainly 9 competitors there, 9 drivers. You would think that there was a little bit of an opportunity for intermingling, but I can tell you for a fact that the 246 trying to continue with the Sport Challenge and still get to enjoy the races firsthand and close up. But it is the number 244 that is the race leader here. So now the drivers just getting used to the positions that they find themselves in. A very good start to proceedings there for the 246, and they know it. A good start then for the 246 car. That is the car that obviously has already taken a win this year, but it is also the car with which we had another chassis build, and that is Rafa Brocchi taking over now from Vitor Gens, who set the fastest time of a 1:48.860. There is your benchmark to try and get even towards that, if not maybe even nudge it a little bit going out of pit lane. So job done for the 23, but that's not quite what Vitor Batista had in mind, as Leonardo Herrmann will now have to go into the race. The really frustrating thing about that man is that if you share a hotel room with him, whatever you do, go to sleep first, because his snoring was quite an incredible conversation piece. That one I do get to carry with me, which is good. So still the drivers press on with a very exciting run all the way up to the top end of speed. That was 2 drivers going for the same rubbing of racetrack. And on this occasion, it just did not work. So now, of course, all of those drivers will venture their way back into the pits. They will swap the car out with the old transponders to then become the new transponders. And the drivers will take over from their original team. So the 246 of Vitor Gens will now be piloted by Rafa Brocchi. Now he is the Australian, he is the talented run on the far side to try and get up to an auspicious place at the front end of the grid. So now with the drivers having completed their run, they will come back to the pits. And of course, when you combine the times that they have already set with the times that they're about to set to find the median, that is what the drivers are hoping for. So this is only after one time trial lap, but obviously they'll want to put as much as they possibly can into that fabulous run from the young man from the UK. I know exactly who you were referring to there. It's Vitor Gens who put his car into the top spot. Then it is G. Banderas in front of the 2 the new batters as they run in close proximity. So now the contenders are doing their best to get themselves lined up and dialed in, ready for the last qualifying session of the day. The final 20 minutes that will decide on the median who is going to be in pole position. We know, of course, overall, almost certainly, without doubt, that it will be the 544, the combination of regular driver Marcel Muller and ringer, if you will, the fantastic talents of the incredibly strong and acute mindset of Ruiz and Carlos Ruiz. The two Chileans ended up having a small fire that had to be put out. Fortunately, everybody is okay in that incident, I should just point out, but it doesn't have to make things more spicy for the qualifying session. The drivers will be heading down to the end of the pit lane, ready to continue in just a few short moments' time. So we go into the last qualifying session of the four. The day before the first of our endurance races in the Porsche Carrera Cup and Porsche Sprint Challenge Brazil categories. First 4 rounds of the championship saw some big battles at the Velocita circuit round 1, and then again at the same location for round 2. Then on to Interlagos, the home of Formula 1 in Brazil since 1990. Then we moved to here a week ago, the Sprint Challenge competitions. Now here we are again for the endurance. That's the 45. That's Josimar Nito looking to get back behind the wheel of the car once again, saving that car and getting it ready for another big push. I think we're going to see some changes of personnel now as the cars are making their way down to the end of pit lane, ready for the green light for the final 20 minutes of this phase of proceedings to come. So naturally, a lot of excitement among the competitors to move their way around this fantastic 4.684 kilometers, quicker than anybody else. So waiting at the end of the pit lane then are the competitors ready to go out onto the circuit. And it looks like it's going to be the very talented and very eager teammate of Cecilia Rebelo that is going to head out onto the course to try and put up or shut up in this particular competition. That is Pietro Rembado. Always nice to see teams not only giving women engineers the chance to shine, but giving them a platform where they can feel relatively fun and comfortable and enjoying on part of the inside jokes and things as well in this paddock. But this is a very jolly paddock in motorsport. Racing, I would say, is probably only about 1/3 of what happens here. The other 2/3 are fantastic networking opportunities or workspace, office desk. And then the second enlightening moment for all of those competitors is that, thank goodness it isn't raining. Well, I'm not sure if you're going to win that fight or not, but certainly looking at the top spot, you start to consider essentially to the partners around him, why did we do that on that particular run? Out onto the circuit, the green flag flies for the last 20 minutes of the day as the drivers will try to find the median lap time in the car that they shared with their previous encounter, their previous driver. So Pietro Rembado has gone onto the circuit in the car that was being driven fairly quickly, it has to be said, in the previous run by Cecilia Rebelo. Then Rafa Brocchi taking over the car, vacated by the fantastic Victor Gens. So Victor Gens, who was up in the top spot just before the stoppage. There is Pietro Rambano taking over from Cecilia Rebello's car, of course. But Cecilia Rebello did a good job in her run just a short while ago. Just 9 cars, of course, in the Sprint Challenge competition for the endurance quota, because a lot of the drivers in the other categories will actually find themselves in other similar categories, but also largely, of course, because the Porsche Carrera Cup Sprint Challenge features a lot more novice drivers, a lot of rookies overall. You've got rookies in this competition, but then you've also got the rookies overall after what has been a very convincing top 5 run for them. So there is the 98, and that is the car currently being steered oh so eloquently at Ferrari. So as the drivers get their cars dialed in, warmed up, no tricks, no more messing about, just trying to make sure that the car is still perfectly in a good position to challenge for higher than 5th position. But if all that's what we can get, I think that's all we're going to take in this one. As we watch the number 23, that is the car now being driven by Vito Bacista, who was going wheel to wheel there with Lawrence Wellen. So as we gear ourselves up with the tyres up to temperature, brakes up to temperature as well, expect some exciting challenges up front. So the first lap times should be coming in any moment now from drivers who are just starting to learn about life at the Autódromo Algarve circuit. For those who weren't here racing last week, it's a real culture shock and an eye-opener. Doing so in a very front-heavy, shall we say, is probably the best key to describing the situation at the moment. So with 11:05 still to go then in this race, a really big chance for him as he continues to... So now we're waiting to see what the first fast lap times are going to be when the competitors come through. There is the number 23, Vitor Bacista, and there is the number 98 of Pietro Rambano. This is where we're going to find out who is going to get the decent lap times on the board, as across the line goes goes Pietro Rambano, and that's a 1:49.442, a very solid start then for Pietro Rambano, and that appears to be an issue as well for the 45. Zooming up into 2nd position, so Ramirez hanging on to things. Oh no, my apologies, that's Mario and it's also Mario Nito. I've got to try and get some more decent laps on the board. As up to the top spot comes Fabio Carboni, a 1:49.3. You combine it with the time that's lost elsewhere, he's still got plenty of reasons to smile and be happy about it. But Mattioro and naughty competitors, Nito competitors, of course. Can't read my own handwriting sometimes. I'll get my worms out eventually. But the drivers are dialing in, trying to find those fast lap times that are going to put them to the top spot. Fabio Carboni out there on the course in number 66, coming up over the top of the crest. They are currently leading. And of course, that's going to put them ahead of several of their opponents. So Fabio Carboni holds the keys to a prospective pole position here. So the times keep on tumbling, but this man, Fabio Carboni, senses there's even more to come from this engine. It's currently at a 1:49.383, but let's not forget that was his first serious flying lap. He's going to come into the pits though. The number 98, that is Pietro Rimbano. Not sure if he's coming into the pits permanently or if he's going to make some slight adjustments. There are a couple of shuffles of the deck, I should point out, here this weekend. One of the most dramatic of those is the absentee Rubens Barrichello and Werner Neugebauer. Two drivers who crushed the opposition last year whenever they possibly could to secure the title fight. Went down to the wire, as these things usually do in November at Sao Paulo. A stone's throw away from the Autódromo Algarve is where we find ourselves today, though. Up over the top of the break. 2:33, doing a very solid job here. As the cars continue to try and find that little sweet spot between where they know what the car can do traveling under braking, but they can also sit down, fire up the computer and just dive in. There's the treble 9. Somebody call the police, because up to the top spot it is now Joao Gonçalves who has gone quickest of all. 1:48.8571. Where's that going to put Mrs. Malkevs into the competition? I can't see a number 9. "12.5 minutes roughly to go in the session, and it's all hail to the L as the owners are trying to find a decent way for our two drivers in this one to push themselves further forward and ask for that additional cup. And you've got them on your side whether they want you to be there or not. So Grant Bobojewski. Still waiting for those incredible fast laps to be added to the times from earlier on. That means that with the time of Joao Gonçalves, he had a treble 9, didn't he? No, he had an 8 plate, my apologies. But through the wrath of the cortex, there's always a chance to bounce back. There's always a chance to bounce back and reboot. Oh dear, you're going to find yourself with a very hot customer right on your 6. Just over 10 minutes to go then, and it's the number 999 that has gone to the top spot. Gonçalves behind the wheel with a 1:48.571. Always amuses me how there's so many competitors who on the sidelines are content to just sit and watch. But many of them now seems like it's almost carelessness. So let's see how the closing phase of this final leg of the Australian, of the Porsche Carrera Cup Sprint Challenge Enduro of Brazil. Fascinating to see how it's all going to conclude as the drivers are just trying to make sure they've got the right tyres, they've got the right temperatures, the rest of it. Is that a glider? They've now battled away for position all the way through. There's the 23 back in pit lane. That is Vito Bautista having taken over from Leonardo Herrmann yet. He asked if it was okay to switch stints, switch teams. They've certainly done that. And it's a similar story in Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil in the qualifying, where one guy gets you to the closest front as possible, and if you can stay within 6/10, he'll be the one pushing you forward. Big run wide there for the two leaders. Well, if that isn't opportunistic motorsport, then I don't know what is. So, round to the far side again, where I'm at. And so we have just 10 minutes left of qualifying. The drivers are trying to find that little bit of extra speed they can eke out of themselves, ready ahead of tomorrow's endurance race. And that is going to be a long one, but I promise you the races will not be dull. And so for the last 9 minutes of the session then, the drivers having left the cars in their trusty hands of the people around them. It'll be a really fascinating end to this fourth and final session. 9 minutes go on the clock. And it's Joao Gonçalves, Fabio Carboni, Pietro Rimbano. All these names are steadily trying to learn the craft as I go. Out onto the circuit then goes Fabio Carboni. Hopefully for him, the last time, because he'll be staying out until he gets the lop out or the lap time that he was after. In the braking zone. And still, Fabio Carboni cannot get one over on Joao Gonçalves. Third place for Michael Lederer. Then in fourth place, it is Brimand. Vicuña Batista. Benjamin Batista goes. And it's going to be a very tight run indeed between our title protagonists, is what I meant to say. A lot of them here at Portimão, as the whole racing community here has essentially begun treating this area back in the late 80s, early 90s. Just inform people to don't forget to enjoy themselves and have some fun. Never easy to predict who's going to get pole position, but I think it's clear to say that the dominant force of the similar lap times set by Felipe Fraga and Marcel Müller across the two stints earlier on today. Great to see them really maximizing the potential of that Fabian Petronas car. But I have got a bit of a feeling there is a chance that a couple of the competitors will be trying to make good opportunities come to them with 7 minutes of banking to go. So with just over 7 minutes to go, and obviously the battle for pole position pretty much raped up here in the safing position. P2 was a very close run thing for pole position. We're looking at the number 98 now. This is the car belonging and raced, of course, in period. The drivers continue to put pressure on each other during the qualifying. This bodes well for the race itself. Very exciting stuff with 6.5 minutes to go. Number 99 trying to make some progress. I tell you what, Rimbano has made good progress in the number 98 car that he's going to be sharing tomorrow with Cecilia Rebelo. So they've started as they mean to go on, up at the sharp end. So looking at the times as they combine, the 999 car is actually going to be the quickest of session 2. But interestingly, the pole position in the category does not go to him because of the consistency. When you measure the two medians up together, the fastest time in the sprint challenge category is actually the number 21. That's Daniel Newman and Bandero, who are running very close together. Five and a half minutes to go then as we look at the number 23 charging into turn 1. That's Vitor Batista in the silver machine. And so now the number 23 of Vitor Batista is able to try and draw some lead on the battles around them. There's the 66, that's Fabio Carboni that he shares with Cedric Later. Interestingly, I would say he's probably the third best rookie driver at the moment. 45 has gone up to the top spot, and it's Matti Ioru that's in the lead of the race this time. There's going to be a very interesting final couple of moments then to see if there's going to be one final roll of the dice. Yorio has gone quickest, sharing his car, of course, with Jose Molinito. Look at the pressure that the drivers are putting on themselves. Oh, a bit of a tank snapper there from the 66, Fabio Carboni, trying to extract that a little bit more out of the car. He's just found a 149.243. They can find a little bit more, but they really are stretching it in the closing stages of this qualifying session now. 4 minutes left as Yorio's gone to the top spot. Gonçalves is in second on a 148.571. Rimbano has just put the car back up into third position on a 148.676, and that's Vitor Batista, having just put the number 23 car that he shares with Leonardo Herrmann into fourth position alongside Fabio Carboni. Here is Fabio Carboni trying to find that little bit more rhythm off the final turn. He's been going very quickly. Purple in sector 1, relatively good in sector 2 as he goes up into the top spot. Does he? No, fourth position. Fourth position for Fabio Carboni, 148.814. There's a lot of interested faces along the pit wall here, and that lap time from Fabio Carboni is enough to put them into the Sprint Challenge pole position. Quicker than Vitor Batista. There's only 2 cars in the Sprint Challenge grid. Then we've got the Challenge Sport and Challenge Rookie, of course. But Challenge Rookie, I think, only has 4 cars on their grid, and then obviously Sport is 3 separate cars as well. The 45, the 98, and the 2, I do believe so. So clearly there's a little bit of motivational spur from Bruno Bonifacio as we have a look at Pietro Rembano, who's done a 148.676. So it's a very impressive performance then from Pietro Rembano. If you combine his money earlier on, and so in the last couple of minutes, what have the drivers still out there trying to find that little bit of extra pace going to provide for us? Keep an eye on Daniel Newman, the leading rookie in the Sprint Challenge standings so far this year in the sprint competition. Endurance competition is pretty much exactly the same cars. They're still almost exactly the same way, except that instead of entering yourself, you enter a multiple category with multiple manufacturers. Or in this case, race teams. Up the top of the crest, 143. And so is there going to be one final roll of the dice then as we go into the final flying lap of the weekend in qualifying trim for the 66 of Fabio Carboni as we watch the number 98 car, that's Pietro Rembano at the wheel. Looking at sector times, well, fastest of all in sector 2 has been Fabio Carboni. Fastest of all in sector 3 appears to have been Gonçalves. Fresh off the boat after a tough race weekend for you, I'm guessing, and the Apex team. Final minute, and Yorio doing a good job here on a 148.364, but that time measures quite disproportionately to Jose Molinito, who's done a 150.572. Then Batista and Newman. Oh, that car has gone backwards. So that is the 66 rolling backwards down the hill. So what has happened there to Fabio Carboni at the end of the session? Trying to move the car off the line. Well, there it is. So I'm not entirely sure what's happened there to Fabio Carboni. Hopefully we can find out on a replay. But they're right off the racing line, so I don't think that's going to constitute a stoppage to the session. Certainly an interesting conversation going over the radio, I think, to the race engineers there as Fabio Carboni tries to come up with the best possible excuse for why that has gone awry. So it looks to me as though the sport pole is going to go the way of Yorio and Nito. That's a great competition, that is, for those two. Third place in front of what is essentially the home crowd. Now, the final couple of moments of the session is everybody trying to find that little bit of extra pace to get back to the line quickly. But Yorio and Gonçalves have both decided they've had enough. Fabio Carbone's car has decided it's had enough. I didn't really get a say in the matter. But Yorio gets the fastest time. Oh, sounds like there's been a bit of a spin somewhere. In my headphones, I've heard a very big screech of tyres. It sounds like somebody's had a fairly nasty spin post-checkered flag, which is rather embarrassing if that's the case. I've got shades of Heverton Cardoso here, who had that accident at Interlagos during timed qualifying. And under red flags, he barrowed into the pits and ended up losing the back end of the car on the way through. But there is the stationary Fabio Carbone, the team that has not quite come home yet, but has still been classified as the Sprint Challenge pole sitter. Second position, the 98, and that is Pietro Rimbano teaming up with Cecilia Rebello. They will guide the direction further forward. And then the third and final class to discuss, of course, is that of the Challenge rookie competitors. And that will see the number 21, Daniel Newman, pick up the pieces with a 1:49.266. So there's some big drama to talk about then over the course of the qualifying sessions. It's been a pretty interesting one across the 4 timed runs, where we have our 6 pole sitters. The number 21, Daniel Newman, sharing the car with Gregor Bandera. They're going to be running together from the Challenge pole position. That is the Challenge rookie pole position, I should point out. The Challenge Sport pole position will go the way of the number 98 car. That is Pietro Rimbano and Cecilia Rebello, who takes a pole position on her endurance debut in 2025. So very good work indeed for her. And then the overall Sprint Challenge pole position actually goes to this team, the 66 of Fabio Carbone and Sadek Leiter. So fascinating to see that they have now pushed themselves very hard indeed. Are we going to see what happened to Fabio Carbone? He's trying to figure out, well, I was trying to see if we were going to figure out what actually happened to his car. But this is the car that's going to be pole position in the class tomorrow. Then, of course, we've got the 3 pole sitters in the wider category. And that is very exciting to talk about. The 911 will be in the Carrera Cup rookie pole. That is Silvio Modestoni and Jeff Giassi. And they will be 12th on the grid tomorrow. Then, of course, the sports category pole position. That'll be the 27 of Yosimar Junior and Sergio Ramayo. And the overall pole position, the 544, Marcel Muller and Felipe Fraga. There are your pole position contenders. Newman and Bandera in Challenge Rookie. Cecilia Rebello and Pietro Rimbano in Challenge Sport. But it's Sadek Leiter and Fabio Carbone in Challenge. So there you go. We're going to have 34 cars out on the circuit tomorrow, and we're going to have a very exciting time of it in the first of our 3 races this season, which will be of Endurance Challenge stock. And are we going to see some great racing tomorrow? You bet your bottom dollar we are. 34 cars will go around the Autódromo Internacional Algarve, and it will be a real thriller to add to the spectacles that we've already had 4 times in 2025. So tomorrow, slightly earlier in the day, we will bring it to you just about 1 o'clock local time. Just before then, we will go live. So it's going to be a fascinating challenge and a great afternoon of motorsport in the Porsche Carrera Cup battle. We cannot wait to see how it all unfolds. From myself, Jake Stanton, from our producer, Nicholas Otterloo, and the rest of us behind the scenes working to make the race battle come to you, we are so grateful for your patronage and grateful to see you all on the stream. Join us tomorrow when we go racing for the 5th time in 2025, the 2nd time in as many weeks at the Autódromo Internacional Algarve, and we knuckle in for a great Enduro challenge. See you tomorrow.
Aqui pra mim. Obrigado.